Good evening and welcome to Real Talk, where every Sunday night we offer insight, education, and resources to in-home caregivers and those affected in their world. This is the children, the parents, the extended family, the agencies, everyone that's touched. And our goal is to offer real-life topics and learning through discussing real issues and offering real solutions. And tonight, I'm particularly excited to welcome our guest from all the way on the other side of the world. We have tonight with us Louise Dunham from Placement Solutions, and she is joining us from Melbourne, Australia. I personally have had the great pleasure of knowing Louise for several years. I've worked with her both on the INA Board of Directors, and I've worked with her and her team to offer newborn care specialist training in Australia. So we've gone back a ways. And here's the thing. Louise has been around our industry for a number of years, and yet she's managed to do something that not everybody can do. She's managed to stay relevant. She's managed to stay on top of things and in touch with what's going on, and has had a really significant impact by passing her wisdom and experience on to younger agencies, to nannies all across the world. And tonight, she's going to be sharing with us. She's even a book author. And because I got mentioned in there, but anyway, tonight we're going to dig into some of that wisdom, some of what Louise has to share, and really get some great information, because what Louise is going to share with us tonight is really relevant to what's going on in our world today, what's impacting us, and some of the things that over the years she has learned are important. But before we get into our topic tonight, I've had lots to say, but Louise, I would love it if you could tell us a little bit about you, about your background in the industry, and anything that's important, like cute grandchildren or something.
Well, g'day everybody, g'day world, g'day Tonya, and it's lovely to be talking to you from across the miles. I set up my agency 32 years ago because I was the mother of one, a school teacher, high school history teacher. I had a brand new Macintosh and I was studying a genealogy, as it turned out, and I thought, what am I going to do in my spare time? I'll keep it brief, but I set up a cleaning business, but everybody kept asking the cleaners to look after their children. While you vacuum cleaning, I'll just whip down the street. Can you keep little Johnny in his cot? With me going, hang on, no, I'm not comfortable with that. If little Johnny needs to be looked after, vacuum cleaner goes off, and we provide childcare. So that was really, and that took off because people knew that I was a school teacher, I guess. So for 32 years, we've run an agency. We've been small, we've been large, we've been medium-sized. We have always stuck to our principles, and the team I have working with me now get that we hire nannies on integrity, intelligence, energy and enthusiasm. It's given that they've got a love of children, and obviously we look for references there. How does that play out to the rest of the world? We make sure that any nannies that we have on our books, either as a labour hire firm or a recruitment firm, go to families who respect and appreciate the person that they will be legally employing. The largest part of our business is our labour hire firm, so we employ most of the nannies. It's been my honour to have spent so much time in America in the last 10 years with INA and with APNA, and making so many great friendships with colleagues who get that we have the most important job in the world, looking after people's children in their home. And yes, I have two cute grandchildren, one called Reuben, who's 5, and a little baby called Maeve, who I've held in my arms maybe 5 times in the last 11 months, which makes me very sad because we're in stage 4 lockdown in Melbourne, and I'm not allowed to hold my granddaughter.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that, Louise. I will be very, very grateful for all of us. But when it becomes personal for a friend of mine, now I'm going to be especially grateful for you when that changes and you get to hold that grandbaby again. Don't make me tear up. Jeez.
Yes, me
Right?
too.
Um, so, what we're going to talk about tonight is something that really has impacted our industry for many years, for decades even. And you and I have both been in this industry about the same amount of time. And whether it's in the past or whether it's current, solidarity, kind of sticking together and really working together in our industry and supporting our industry has been a huge thing that has made a difference in the quality of the caregivers and the quality of what you as an agency can provide in that very important issue of legal employment, etc. And I would like to kind of look first a little bit about the history, kind of where things have gone in the last, say, 75 years in terms of women working outside the home, parents working outside the home, childcare, etc. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Sure, and of course, 75 years ago was the end of the Second World War, and I think we all know about the American Rosie the Riveter. And what did Rosie the Riveter do after she'd worked in the factory? After my mother was a secretary with the New Zealand Army and travelled all over Europe. They sent them home, took off their uniforms, and they were encouraged to stay home and have babies. I'm a baby boomer. I'm the product of one of those. Uh, but the women found the jobs weren't there. And then by the 60s, and I'm talking of Australia, but I know it's echoed somewhat in America as well. By the 60s, those women, their children were teenagers and they were looking for jobs, and the world's never really been the same. Working women still have the main burden of childcare in Australia. I think it's fair to say in America and the United Kingdom. And they cannot get out the door without quality childcare. Now, that was 75 years ago. We're in a pandemic. In Australia, we are using terms like the she-cession for recession, the bloke economy for the recovery. I don't know if you all know that term, blokes. A good bloke is an Australian male. That's a bit of our slang. And I can see the writing on the wall that unless we're really careful, our clients, who are mainly the mothers who call us, but it's the parents, they won't be calling us because they won't be in the workforce. There won't be jobs for them. And that's looking on the downside. What can we do to make sure that all the education and training that women have had for the last 75 years, the willingness to get back out to work, the need to be working because we've all got rent and mortgages to pay, and how that impacts on the quality of the caregivers and the nannies and the educators and the early learning in-home care educators, whatever you want to call them, please don't call them babysitters. What's going to happen?
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that it is a big concern in the United States and in the UK as well, because even with all the progress that has been made over the last 75 years, there's still that expectation. Well, if both of you are working, if two parents are working in a household where we have a mother and father, the expectation is, well, mom quits her job and stays home and the husband keeps working. Or, even in situations where we have a single parent, there's still that expectation of, well, you are female, so you're staying home. And yeah, I absolutely agree that if we aren't looking at what can we do, we have that risk of going backwards. Um, how do you feel like in particular, like the last 20 years have changed things?
I was going to say, that is one side of the horror story. Women are going backwards. But you know what? We've moved on a bit since the 50s. We've been educated. We've become feisty. We're aware of women power, the Me Too movement, you name it, Betty Friedan, Germaine Greer. We're not going back, I don't think. Dearly as I love my children and grandchildren, I would say the last 20 years in particular, there has been a growing awareness of the rights of all women. And it's not just about architects and lawyers and doctors and politicians and actors and actresses. It's about all working people having access to quality childcare, and quality childcare, part of that recipe is that child carers must be happy to go to work, get paid legally and get paid well. I do need to say in the last 20 years, and I can particularly speak in Australia, my expertise is obviously in Australian childcare. I know quite a bit about America thanks to my involvement with INA and with people like you, Tonya, and APNA, and a bit about the UK and quite a lot about New Zealand. But in the last 20 years particularly, they set up an Australian In-Home Childcare Scheme, and one of the consequences of that was that National In-Home Childcare Standards were written, and that was set up by a Senate steering committee from the federal government. I was thrilled to sit on that committee, and I was thrilled to take part in a government taking seriously the need to talk about what kind of risks have we got when we're in-home childcare. One of the ones that came out that is easiest to discuss, and most childcare workers will say, well, this is a given, but there were no rules until 2007, is that neither nannies nor parents nor visiting grandparents can smoke in the home where there is a child. Now, I know most child carers are going to be horrified that anybody would even think to do that, but that was one of the advances. Tasmania, which is my home state, little island at the bottom of the world, they have the best in-home childcare standards in the world. I have done quite a bit of research on who's doing things properly. I don't know enough yet about Scandinavia, but usually the Scandinavian countries will win. But I am more than happy to put the Tasmanian in-home childcare standards up on the web as a resource for anybody, any agency or any nanny that's interested in reading them. And it's all about risk assessment. It covers things like what to do if you're on the farm looking after the children and there's an unfenced dam out the back, what to do if you've got a snake in the kitchen, to child protection issues, which unfortunately are the world over. And we have made big gains in 20 years. I think that there is an awareness that you should be legally paying your nanny. I'm not so naive to think that it's still happening everywhere, but there isn't an awareness.
Mm-hmm. I would say definitely the pandemic, at least here in the United States, has brought that awareness about paying legally right to the forefront for a lot of families who are facing unemployment claims that they didn't realize they were going to be facing, or maybe they did and thought they'd take the gamble. But that has definitely gone up. And yeah, definitely if you post the link or you share it with us, when we're finished, we will make sure that that gets up about the Tasmania thing. I know I would love to check that out. And I know that a lot of our audience is definitely fascinated about standards in other countries. I love the fact that Australia has national standards. That's amazing. I know that there are some people who are fighting to have some standards for, at least for professional caregivers in the UK, because friends of ours are working on that. Eventually, maybe we'll get there in the US. Right now, we have laws around how in-home child care providers should be paid legally, but we don't really have any guidelines around standards, and that would be lovely to see. we've looked at 75 years. We've talked about in the last 20 years. What about in like the last decade or even more recently? What kind of things do you think, from your perspective, have really come to the forefront?
Well, I believe very strongly it's been 10 years since I first went to America to the first INA conference I attended in San Francisco, and really felt that I was in a room full of people who for once didn't treat me as though I was mad for saying, please don't call me a babysitter, and nannies deserve to be paid legally and supported and respected. And as I said, I believe in the last 10 years there's an awareness, and I don't think that awareness will go away. I do think that there's been a collaboration, and we've certainly seen it with Nanny Palooza, but we've seen it with online. It's easier to get hold of like-minded people, and it's easier to do research about how other countries are doing it. Make no mistake, the Facebook groups that the nannies have, and there are various of them, and the one Kate Lewis is the moderator from Sydney, information and support gets out to nannies who, I'm not reading so many of those. I'm 17 and I took a live-in nanny job away from home, and they're not paying me, but I keep my unemployment benefits. But I'm working 7 days a week and looking after 3 dogs and 5 children. Is that normal?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not, that's an exaggeration. I'm not seeing as many of those, and I think there's a whole group of nannies that would jump very quickly on a post like that and say, girl, you need to know your rights, you need to get out of that job. Yeah. And I think that's a great thing. Looking forward into the future, though, we mustn't drop the baton. As I said, in Australia, they're talking of the she session and a bloke recovery. I heard Daniel Butcher say, and it's his term, but I really like it, there's going to be an army of the desperate, starting as the pandemic eases off in America, in Australia, in Europe, that will take any job at all. Already Randstad Recruitment have done some research in Singapore, and people are taking in Singapore a 50% drop in pay to get a job. And I'm not just talking about caregivers, I'm talking about any jobs. I think what worries me is that a lot of people will make the old assumption it's just babysitting. I've got a couple of kids, anyone can do this, or I've got a niece down the road. What, I need a first aid certificate. I should have qualifications. I'm not allowed to smoke or even smack the children. But they're going to undercut us. They will undercut us in price. There are disaffected school teachers, I believe, particularly in America, who are saying the stress isn't worth it. There are flight attendants in Australia who will be looking for work. That bothers me, and we've got to beat it.
Yeah, I would agree with you on all of those points. I'm hearing already in the nanny community here in the United States, a lot of them go to apply for a job, and it's not just that they are desperate for work. The wonderful things, so I don't want to discount those. There are also people who are willing to take advantage of that. And I am hearing from the nanny community, I showed up for a job and they told me I was crazy to ask for $18 an hour, but I should be happy to just get 10 because lots of people are looking for work, even though minimum wage in my city is $15 an hour. And
that's going to get worse.
Yep.
And we as an industry need to work out tactics to combat it. Mm-hmm. And the best tactic I know is solidarity amongst the agencies, amongst the nannies, amongst the training colleges, and amongst the honest parents that have come to an appreciation or are just plain intelligent and figure that the right thing to do is to treat the person who looks after your child as though they were made of gold, because this is a precious gift for your children. And I do think that they're going to coexist. So we're going to have this army of the desperate, and we're going to have good nannies. So good nannies are going to have to polish up their resumes, become part of the connected, and really work what they've got going for them that other people that are going to take a pay cut have not got going for them.
Absolutely. That's a huge part of why we even started doing Real Talk and to provide these educational opportunities, was to get input from people like you who can say, this is what, my years of experience have shown me you're going to need to do. And it's why we created, I did a video called Standing Up and Standing Out in Difficult Times, because I've been through some tough times in my 35 years in the industry. And it's why we're is about interviewing and resumes, working with agencies, making yourself, as you said, polishing up your resume and your education to make sure that you're ready to combat those, because the excellent caregivers will always stand out. And if we all work together, that's a beautiful point. That solidarity will make the difference and will still help.
And I think that we will be finding that agencies and nanny support groups will be doing more of things that we probably never thought we'd be doing, such as resume polishing, how to look best on Zoom. Wish I knew that one. How to do a Zoom interview, how to answer difficult questions. What should be in your contract, what's realistic. I think agencies having the courage to say, I'm not going to accept this client. It's okay to fire a client.
Yeah, I agree. And, that's one of those great things. If it's something that agencies want to use, we have a multitude of free resources on our learning platform. And one of them I did about 4 or 5 weeks ago was on the topic of doing a Zoom interview, how to interview in a digital world. And it is all the tips, checking out your background, checking your lighting. Wear short, don't stand up, and a whole variety of things. Is there anything else that you would love to share with our audience tonight, Louise? Any tips, any little bits of wisdom that they can take away from this?
Well, I'm an eternal optimist, and I believe that one of the things that is coming out of the pandemic, and again, I'm reading it worldwide, is an appreciation of the kind of work that caregivers, now I'm putting in a broad category, so mothers, nannies, caring for the aged, what a job they do, and how the economy can't get kick-started again. You might have people going down the mines in Australia to get the coal to send to China, but if they haven't got anybody at home to look after the kids, those mines are going to come to a halt. And an awareness that we're all in this together, and that it's in Australia, we are having conversations about the casualisation of the workforce, particularly in the aged care industry. We're having conversations still, but it looks like it's coming to a final conclusion with the Australian Taxation Office about people who work, we call it cash in hand, and I think you call it under the table. And why they are forced into that situation, how they can get out of it. And you spoke about people filing for unemployment, and how we can ensure that there's an education and understanding of the vulnerability that goes along with working cash in hand. No access to loans, no support. And as you said, and I had heard this from somebody else in America, there are a lot of people filing for unemployment benefits for jobs that nobody knew they had.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they definitely are. And I love that whether we're in the United States, whether we're in the UK, whether we're in Australia, at the end of the day, this industry are the same, that we are focused on quality caregivers for children because they deserve it and they're the future of where we go, but also that those quality caregivers are fairly and legally paid for the very, very important work that they do. And your kind of final point was so right on, Louise, that the in-home caregivers, the child caregivers, whether they're in whatever setting, at the end of the day, without that category, everything else comes to a halt. That those are the people that make the difference. And that is so huge. I'm so thankful that you were able to join us tonight, Louise. I am so grateful. It's night for us, morning for you, but I'm so grateful that whether we're on the west coast of the United States or whether we're on the southern part of Australia, at the end of the day, our desires are the same. Our ambitions for the children of our world are the same, and for those that are caring for them. And I'm really grateful that you could join us tonight.
What a pleasure it has been. And I hope the world, perhaps naively, is going to be a kinder place.
Yes, I hope so. That's for sure. It has really been an honor to learn with you, and you have shared some great takeaways for our audience. It applies to everybody across the board, whether we're caregiver, agency, or we're a family, and that's fantastic. If you and our audience have any questions about this topic or anything that's related to this, or you want to chat with Louise and Placement Solutions, place your comments or your questions in the feed and tag Louise or tag Newborn Care Solutions, and we will make sure that you get an answer in one way or another. And if you are watching this on replay, or you want to catch any of our past segments of Real Talk, you can access those along with our other content on our website. Click on the Education tab and it will take you to all of our educational resources. Thank you for joining us tonight and have a great evening.